I spoke this morning a little bit about convergence and sort of like these converging factors that were all coming together to push integrated medicine or the models of participatory medicine into the forefront. And I think one of those big moments, big parts of convergence is looking at the role of technology, because it wasn't difficult for me to see that some of the things that were being possible as far as the micro practice were only possible because of technology, were possible through things like telemedicine, some of the tools that are being used. And so what I wanted to do is just start to share a little bit about some of the core technologies that we're seeing being super efficient in the delivery of integrative and functional medicine at this moment, with a view to the fact that there are many more. Now, I will say, as a starting point right now, I think that the technologies that will change medicine completely have probably yet to be invented. Right? We are at the beginning of a technological revolution. You see that there's a lot of innovation coming in technology. I would say that those people who have created technologies and are using technologies now are ahead of the game. But it may be someone in this room, it may be someone who's inspired in different ways to create a technology that really helps to, we were just having a conversation in the break, like what could make integrated medicine cool enough that everyone wanted to do it. That certainly hasn't happened yet. There's still an opportunity for to create that, but but it's going to take passionate people operating on the edge of this space. So what I wanted to talk about is when I looked across all these practices, we saw key technologies that were creating massive efficiency, and I wanted to talk about what those are, because ultimately efficiency and integrated medicine have not really gone hand in hand, and that's part of what we've discussed here at the Evolution of Medicine. Is if we can harness the technology that already exists, that works, we can take a lot of the heavy lifting out of the participatory medicine and set up a system to help a lot more people. So the key benefits of implementing technologies, and it's going to be different for different ones, but the first is increased satisfaction. There was some incredible data that came out that said that for most people, they would prefer their doctor it's more important to them that the doctors are using technology efficiently than the outcomes that they were getting, which is shocking. Right? You think some people would want to know their doctor is better at tech, than they're going to get them better, but that is a perception. There is that perception that exists, that doctors that are using technology in a smart way are adding more value. Automation is a huge thing. If you go back, there's a range of ages in the room, but if you just go back 10, 20 years before there was any technology in any practice at all, apart from a calculator, you could see that, we've come a long way in a short period of time. What was I listening to this morning? Oh yeah, I was listening to this clip online. He was saying very, very quickly, new ideas become, who was saying, I was listening to something online. Oh yeah, he was saying for a long time, there was no Wi-Fi on planes, right? There was no Wi-Fi on planes, and people were, if there was just Wi-Fi on planes, I could just get a lot more done. And then suddenly, the Wi-Fi on planes happens, and you got Wi-Fi on planes in America now, and then people are annoyed when the Wi-Fi doesn't work on the plane. But it didn't happen. It wasn't there a year ago. So very quickly, new innovation just becomes an expectation. And so I think that we have to think about that as we move forward. So automation of processes that were not automated before. Tracking is a huge one, being able to track data ongoing. Scale, time saving, making more money. All of this is the whole discussion that we're having about what it's going to take to make this kind of care the standard of care. It's going to take scaling, it's going to take creating practices that have the ability to take a lot more people than just a one provider model. We've got to save time through the process, and we're going to talk a lot about that with Pauline here in a minute. And ultimately, if we can have the technology make more money for the practice, sorry, that was my fault, to be able to to make it easier for practice to be successful, then that's a good thing. So, when I looked out at these modern micro practices that I was seeing, the Jeff Gladds, the Robin Berzins, they had a lot of core technologies down and had looked out to see what the best technologies were so that they could, they could build. So the key things we're going to have to think about is workflow and teamwork, but ultimately there's a lot of benefits that come as a result of it. So what I looked at is what are the seven ways, the top 7 recommendations. I'm not going to go through all of these because some of these things don't exist in Australia, and there's nothing more annoying than me saying you should do this and then it doesn't exist. So I'm only going to talk about the things that I think are available in Australia. But if we look at this, there's a lot of things here that are inefficient parts of the current practice model, right? So patient education. This is the number one thing where when speaking to practitioners, I realized that most practitioners were doing their patient education in a one-on-one format in the actual appointment at $300 an hour, right? That, talk about the perceived value that you were talking about in that question, yeah? If you're just delivering information to them in a format where they remember 5 to 10% of it, and you're expecting that to deliver value, don't be surprised if they don't want to come back for another session because you're giving them a ridiculously expensive education. So some automated patient education system, some automated pre-education system to deliver what's in your brain to the patient in an efficient way that doesn't require your time is an important technology innovation here. The intake we're going to talk a little bit about because this is something that has traditionally been super inefficient, and there are tools that can be used internationally now, and we'll talk a little bit about that. The supplement management is something that is happening in America now. I don't know if it's reached here, but it's essentially ways to, not have to stock all the products. It's been an interesting evolution in functional medicine in America where Bob Rowntree, who's a sort of a functional medicine legend, he was lecturing the other day, and he said when he decided to do his functional practice in 1981, right, he realized that milk thistle was good, and he was just like, well, I better get some milk thistle, and it was still years away from the supplement companies making it in very easy to take things, so he literally had the plant in a bottle in his thing, and he would give it to people and make them chew it. So that's the evolution of this medicine, is that was not available. There wasn't a demand for the supplement companies to make the milk thistle. Now you can get it in a million different varietals, but that's always the way with an industry. It starts super inefficient and slow, and then it becomes more and more inefficient, more and more efficient as you go along. Like the cell phone. 1989, everyone's got the massive cell phone, and then it gets smaller and sleeker over time, and much more effective. We're going to talk about telemedicine. I think that, this is just like the most simple thing. If you're thinking about one thing that you could add, having a telemedicine component, it's like a big thing for your marketing. You can now say like, hey, we're a modern practice. You don't even have to come in. It's still a value separator from you, from other people. It's easy to use. People have the technology that they need to facilitate telemedicine right now. And so there's a lot of value that you can add with just a simple addition like that. We're going to talk about patient tracking. I don't know whether some of the things we're talking about are available here, but I want to talk about some of the concepts, and we'll go through. So let's talk about the patient education system first. So this is the center of our practice accelerator. As soon as that information came out from the Institute for Functional Medicine showing the systemic inefficiency in functional medicine, we had to dive in because we realized that we had a lot of value to add here. So in the most efficient practices, what we're seeing now is that essentially they deliver patient education and practice marketing in 3 specific things. So one is prospect nurture. So when that person signs up for one of your events, doesn't come in, what series of education do you send them on? What journey do you send them on to learn, to pre-educate them about what to expect in your practice? Think about all the things that you end up saying over and over and over again. If you're saying things over and over and over again to patients, that's the sign to say, okay, I should make a video about that. I should make a blog post about that, and I should link that to them in the system. So now what we're seeing is that a lot of practitioners will do 30 ways in 30 days, or that's an email every day for 30 days, which is quite a lot. Maybe it's going to be like 5 emails in the first 8 days that they come onto your list, where you're just going to communicate to them who you are, what you do. You get an opportunity to do it perfectly every time. The cool thing about this email autoresponder technology is that you set it up once and you forget it. So you set it up, everyone comes into that system, and then they go through that very predictable process. And so you're creating a way to tell the story of your practice in the same way to, to people over and over again. So prospect nurture is a big one. Then what we started to see when practitioners had this down, so they had a series of emails that they were getting, that they were able to do, then people started to think, okay, there are all these things that I'm sending out to patients in anticipation of their first visit. So this is triggered by them coming onto your list in any way, right? So coming to one of your events, signing up for one of your events but not coming, just coming to your website and putting in their email address, whatever. Like this is happening right at the beginning of the relationship. Now they've booked an appointment. Right, so now they've booked an appointment to come and see you. What is all the stuff that you would want to tell someone who's coming in for an appointment? Do you want to introduce them to your practice team? Do you want to introduce them to your intake process? Do you want to introduce them to like who to call if you can't find the building? Or, there are certain things that have come into this that you end up telling people over and over again. Do you have forms to have them fill out? That kind of thing. And then the post-appointment sequence as well. So what you're doing essentially is taking information that you have to deliver to everyone anyway and putting in an instruction, delivering it with an email autoresponder. So the email autoresponder technologies that a lot of practitioners use, MailChimp is probably the most friendly of all, like user-friendly, get response as well. One of the reasons why we like both of those is because they are very easy to set up the autoresponders. It's kind of fun in the backdrop. It's easy to use. There are things like Constant Contact and other ones that are just a bit more clunky in the back end. And so it needs a bit more tech expertise to use. MailChimp is really super simple. The most advanced one that I see more and more sort of advanced practices moving towards is ActiveCampaign. ActiveCampaign is a little bit more, but it has a ton of functionality that you use as you start. Once you start getting the basic things working, and your mind gets attuned to what's possible with email automation, suddenly you're starting to think, oh, I wonder if we could do something like this. Or, I wonder if we could send a message to just the people who, have signed up for one of our events but never showed up. Could we do an email to those groups? Yeah, you can. And you can organize it based on this. So, email autoresponder. This is the heart of the Practice Accelerator. We teach practitioners to create this. We actually have pre-written templates for this whole prospect nurture that you can edit to make it really easy to do that. But there's a ton of time. If you want participatory medicine, you need to educate patients how to participate. And if you want to educate them how to participate, you don't want that coming out of your time. And we're going to talk about that a little bit in a minute, because if you can do this with an automated system, it means that the time that you actually spend with them face to face, you can use in the most important way. I should want to say one more thing about that. So Seth Godin, who's a very smart dude, he wrote this book about the future of education. And we're all educators in a certain way, and doctors, docere is, to teach or teacher. And, he sees, in the old days, right, where there was all the information was in sort of an encyclopedia, knowing a lot of stuff and being able to recall it was a good skill, right? That was the skill that you needed. You need to learn, you need to learn a lot of facts to be able to share out, and that's what the schooling was. And what Seth Godin is thinking of, what does school look like? What is school for? What does school look like when you have instant access to any facts in history via the internet? What should it be? And he says, that the skill of the new teacher is to inspire people to want to learn. That's the only thing that you want to do with your time. When you're sitting with people directly, you want to inspire them to want to learn. Because if you can inspire them to want to learn, they're going to learn, and you're not going to be responsible for it. You're not going to have to push them through it. And that's why you're seeing new, innovation in education, where it's all about getting kids. It doesn't matter what they learn. You just want to set them on a project and set them on their own learning journey. Because if they catch the bug of wanting to learn things, your job as a teacher is kind of done. Because they're going to learn anyway. So think about that in this new term. It's like in the old days, there wasn't any information on leaky gut out there, so you had to be the person communicating leaky gut out there. Now there's like 1 million videos, and there's really good ones, there's probably crappy ones too, there's blog posts, there's otherwise. You could just be a master curator and get them interested in these kind of ideas. And you may want to have other people outside of yourself communicate key concepts to them that you want them to learn, so that they know this is not some wacky BS that you came up with. This is like what everyone's talking about, and here's Mark Hyman, and he's the head of the Cleveland Clinic Center for Functional Medicine, whatever, and he's talking about it. Or here's this awesome animated video on stress that I found, and it's another doctor talking about it. So you're curating the information of other credible sources, and that helps you look more credible, and it also helps them to guide on their journey. So the first thing that you can do if you want to put together something like this, think about all the what I have practitioners to do is to just list out all of the awesome resources that you recommend to patients anyway. And then you can start to use that to put together a content calendar, and thinking about curating tools is a really powerful resource there. I want to talk about Living Matrix because I did come to here talk about functional medicine. And I just want to say I don't work for the IFM. I've been kicked out of other conference for being an agent of the IFM. They don't pay me anything. They probably should, because I'm a big advocate for them. But one of the reasons why I'm an advocate for them is because of what I spoke about earlier, the functional medicine matrix being a communication tool for everyone to have the right communication. And one of the reasons why I think we should bet on it is because Living Matrix has a technology that streamlines the intake process. So if you agree that the matrix is a way of people understanding their health, Living Matrix is a technology where instead of the patient coming in and you sitting with them and getting all of their their health, the timeline, the matrix in one go, you end up putting it on, into a system where you just send them an email. So let's go back to the pre-appointment sequence. Now they've booked an appointment. What are we going to do? We're going to send them a link to fill out their paperwork. They come into Living Matrix, and it's going to automate the intake process. It's going to reduce the need for the lengthy intake, and it's going to collect outcomes data from across practices. This fourth one, I think, might be the most important, because I doubt that most of you have the technology expertise in-house to track your own outcomes. I really doubt it. I don't think anyone's doing it. It takes a real techie to deliver something like that. So I think this is important. But they've seen from Living Matrix that if you start to use Living Matrix, you can go from 7.4 per day to 8.7. And that's because you're not spending as much time doing the long intake with people, or that the time that you're spending is really used to dive into the information that they've already provided. So you're going from a scribe to sort of an editor. You're not just being a collector of information, but you're asking about the information that they're delivering in. So I think Living Matrix is good. It's an American thing. You're sending your data to America. Sometimes that can be problematic, but I do understand, that this is just a starting point. But I would just say that I know that there are practitioners that are using it in Australia, and I think that this is an important piece for creating massive efficiency in functional medicine. What's that? Yes. All right, so patient tracking, I don't know what the resources are here in Australia, but I definitely feel, I can definitely feel that the food diary's dead, right? I've told this story before, but I just feel like this happens all the time, is that you recommend a food diary, you have to get your patients to do it between sessions because you want to see what they eat, and then they forget to do it, obviously, on the first to second day because it's a new thing for them, and then they feel guilty about not doing it, and then they feel ashamed because they said they would do it and you're expecting them. You don't know about any of this. All of this shame and guilt and everything is happening in their own room. You just forgot about them. You're seeing all your patients here today, and then you wonder why they canceled their appointment. And it was nothing that you did that was wrong, but it was just they feel guilty about the fact that they didn't do what they said they would do in between visits. Compare that to if you have a technology where you say, okay, I want you to take a photo of everything that you eat in the next 30 days. When the first day comes and they don't take a photo, you have an opportunity to say, hey, did you not eat anything today? And I literally had that experience when I signed up for Parsley Health, and it was great because I was going, and I definitely forgot to do it on the first day, and got a little nudge, and then I was like, okay, now I did it. And then I did it for another few more days, forgot again, and then got a nudge again, and then did it for 30 days. So this is behavior change, takes help from people, and if you don't have any way of knowing what people are doing in between appointments, you're taking the chance that they're going to do what you want them to do, and that if they don't, they may not come back, and it's not your fault, but it kind of is your fault because you could be doing this. So I don't know what the technologies are here to do that. If people have found ones they like, we can talk about that, but you can catch early trends with dynamic feedback. Think about all these technologies. We're going to talk about Victor's here in a minute, but think about technologies that people on your team can learn to implement. Like, I'm not 100% I don't think that you're going to see a lot of doctors in 5 years that are totally ready to interpret wearable data. Like, that seems unlikely to me, but I can see an army of coaches that feel good about it and are there to give their input to the medical team based on that understanding. And this creates a very incredible patient experience where they feel supported even when they're not in the office, which I think is the next step. It's like 24-hour support. Internal communication, I think that what we're seeing is more teams where there's a where people are operating virtually. So maybe you're a health coach. I've heard, from some of the teams here, they're looking to have satellite practices or otherwise. So, these are 4 things that we actually use in our business. So Zoom actually has a telemedicine option. Zoom is a very steady video technology tool, and so they have a telemedicine version. They have a non-telemedicine, non-HIPAA compliant one as well. But Zoom is a really good one. Slack and Asana, like task management and communication between teams outside of email. So I know a couple of clinics that are using that very efficiently when they have the health coach who doesn't work in the office, or they have other practitioners on the team. And as an entrepreneur, I have to say I love Voxer. If you haven't used Voxer, it's awesome. So this is the way. I don't know if this sounds like the kind of thing that you like to do, let me know. Like, you have an idea, you want your team to implement it, you go, beep, I was just thinking about this idea, like blah, 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 or we should write this email, and it's essentially an audio record that you just press once and send, click, and then it's gone to, the chief operating officer, or whoever's like, on your team there. So if you have a team, if you have a business manager, it's just a great way to be able to leave a voice message at the time that you think about it, get it out of your head, not have to go home and write it down or remember to write it down. So I love Voxer, so I would recommend that. Specifically if you have people on your team and you want them to do things for you, which is good.